Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee, getting ready to get my day started. See, that time I didn't fake sip. I really drank coffee. People keep calling me out for that. Fake coffee drinking now. But someone brought up the question. They said, hey, you talk a lot about why exercises that move the body through space produce better results. Why is that? Because the question kind of comes up, it's tension is tension. And this is stuff a lot of these people used to argue with me, Ian McCarthy, Sebastian Sunny back in the day. Like, it doesn't matter, tension is tension. But this was something that the Russians discovered back during the Cold War. They were spending enormous amounts of money trying to produce better athletes. It became a form of warfare for them, so they sunk enormous amounts of money into exercise science and research. And one of the things that they noted was that exercises that moved the body through space in some way that you could load. So people need to understand, we're not talking about calisthenics. Calisthenics is just using your body weight. We're talking about any exercise that moves the body through space, like calisthenics, but where you load it with extra weight, where you add weights. So in other words, weighted body weight exercises, squats, deadlifts, power cleans, weighted dips, weighted chin-ups, weighted pull-ups, things like that. That's what we're talking about. They found that they elicited a larger training response, produced more strength, more muscle mass. So why is that? It's multifold in nature. Number one, it has to do with stabilizers and in using more muscles through the body. Number two, it has to do with things called like the radiant effect. So what we mean by that, let's talk about what we mean by extra muscles being brought in. Some of it is more obvious than others. All right, you take, say, a chin-up versus a lat pull-down. Even if you do an underhand grip lat pull-down, same muscles seem to be worked, right? Well, no, not exactly. When you do the lat pull-down that way, yeah, it does work. The lats, the traps, the rear delts, the biceps, the rhomboids, all of that. But when you add a chin-up into the mix, you get more core involvement. You get more chest involvement, you get more tricep involvement, right? This is all noted on EMGs. This is all noted with data. You get more muscle activation in all of those areas. So those other muscles that are used to stabilize it stimulate more muscle activity through the whole body. Well, more muscle activity through the whole body equals, number one, more muscle growth, number two, more strength, right? Because anytime you try to train a muscle to use other muscles with it in conjunction, it improves your overall strength and athletic performance much better. In fact, the very idea of trying to isolate a muscle is such an enormously flawed concept that it really just needs to be thrown away. It's an outdated concept. It really is. There's never been any studies that I've seen that show that trying to isolate a muscle, that isolating a muscle causes more growth than a compound. Never been seen. Right? In other words, even a lat pull down, which we think of as your body doesn't move through space, it's a simple compound movement and not the best line of pull for the bicep. Study after study shows that a lat pull down produces just as much muscle growth in a bicep as a curl does. Whether you believe that or not, that's fine. It's been studied multiple times. It's been found pretty consistently. So in other words, a curl doesn't even beat a lat pull down for biceps. A tricep extension doesn't beat the bench press for triceps when it's looked at and studied in a lab objectively where they can measure the muscle growth itself using equipment. So the concept is flawed. So in other words, bringing more muscles into the mix tends to cause you to gain more muscle mass overall because more muscles are being stimulated. Then the other thing we look at has to do with even the strength gains. What do we know about compound movements? When it's been studied, doing a compound movement for a body part makes that body part stronger than an isolation does, even when muscle growth is similar. So in other words, adding more muscles into the equation, making it multi-joint, tends to produce better strength in that muscle, even when we test the strength of that muscle in an isolated fashion. Like when we put that muscle into a machine where it's locked in and they can measure the amount of force you can produce when just that one joint is moved. So you can't cheat, like a curl machine and they have your arm strapped in, or a leg extension machine where they strap you down so that you can't cheat. The person who built those muscles using a compound will tend to be able to produce a bit more force than a person who trained them with an isolation movement, even when it's the same isolation movement they trained it on. So we get into this whole point of more overall strength, more overall performance. And that's noted there. Yeah, the upper body ones are pretty big, but what happens when we go to lower body stuff? It becomes even more pronounced. Take the barbell squat versus a leg press. A lot of people say, well, it's the same movement, right? It's the same movement. other than there's no hip drive. There's nothing in the thoracicolumbar sling being activated on a leg press. So in other words, yeah, your legs and everything do get worked on a leg press, but a squat doing a similar movement pattern where you move your body with a barbell loaded on your back, you get far more hip activation. You get enormously more core activation through your entire abdominal region, obliques, spinal erectors, all of that. More lat involvement. Your lats and your traps can actually grow from squats alone, right? That's been looked at and studied too. People who come in and do barbell squats for a few months, they measure them, novices, their entire back structure gets bigger. Their traps grow, their lats grow, everything grows. In some cases, even their biceps grow. But the point is, because you're moving the body through space and you have to load that weight somewhere, there's a lot of additional muscles that get brought into play. So a squat actually probably works almost twice as much, if not twice as much muscle mass through the entire body than a leg press does. It's a tremendously superior growth exercise. Then people come back and say, yeah, but I'm just trying to grow the legs. Well, who in the world just tries to grow their legs? Who in the world goes to the gym to only grow their bicep? I mean, people who have this concept, it's an absurd concept when you really think about it. People say, well, no, that's what I want to focus on that exercise. I obviously want my other muscles to grow. I don't want just my legs to grow and my upper body to stay the same size. I mean, no one goes to the gym and says, I want to get really jacked legs, but I want my upper body to look like I've never worked out. I want the same upper body I had as a 140-pound skinny guy, but I want, 28-inch thighs. Nobody does that. Same thing with the upper body. No one comes in and says, I want to develop 17-inch biceps, but I want to weigh 140 pounds still. I want my back, my chest, my legs to be the same size. No one says that. Right? That's insane. And if you're thinking that way, you're probably not going to come to a channel looking for training advice on YouTube. But the point is, you obviously want stimulation in these other muscles. You will grow faster from these exercises. You'll grow faster because tremendously more muscle is involved. Even a weighted dip works more muscle mass than a bench press. Now, not all weighted body weight exercises can do this efficiently. For example, the push-up, you will never be able to grow as much muscle as you can on a bench press or a weighted dip. Even though it moves the body through space, the problem is there's loading problems. There's no easy way to load it. There can be wrist problems. It's hard to even do a heavy push-up. Again, it's very hard to build to being able to do 350 total pounds on a push-up without hurting your wrist because of things involved. You got to get special attachments, finding ways to safely load it on your back. It's just not as convenient. So the bench press will still be superior overall. But the weighted dip involves all the muscles a bench press does, but it involves more of your back, right? More of your back. Lats and everything get engaged more. Core gets engaged more. So in other words, this is one reason why guys can actually take nothing but weighted dips and weighted chin-ups and build a pretty big upper body. You see where we've gone with this? Because dips work the posterior end more than just the bench press does. And weighted chin-ups work things like the triceps and chest more than a lat pull down or a machine row does. See where we're going with that? In other words, more muscle involvement. You can get bigger overall. And then we start throwing stuff like squats and deadlifts in, it becomes enormous, the difference you could get versus some sort of device where you can fix yourself into place and just move the limbs. Then we have the issue of radiant effect. And for those unfamiliar with this, it's been noted over the years. Tons of people have talked about this for decades. What's been noted is that when you do things like grip the barbell harder on a bench press, what happens? You get better neuromuscular efficiency. In other words, you're sometimes able to recruit a few more muscle fibers. When you brace your core harder and contract your abs really tight, brace your core, you can lift more weight on a lot of exercises. And it seems to be because you're engaging everything tightly, you get more neuromuscular efficiency, and all the muscles that you tighten and contract, it tends to cause an effect where it radiates to other muscles closer by and causes additional activity, so you engage them more. So we get over to the whole radiant effect thing. What's going to produce a larger radiant effect? A squat or a leg press? You can leg press 1,000 pounds without bracing your core particularly tight, without making your body tight, right? You're not going to squat 400 pounds without getting everything tight. Not going to happen. Same thing with a lot of these other exercises. Because they work the core, they force you to engage a lot of additional muscles tightly to stabilize yourself. You get a larger radiant effect. Therefore, you're getting more potential neuromuscular efficiency. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're going to recruit more muscle fibers in the primary movers. That's going to lead to more potential size and strength. So when you look at it from that perspective, there's a lot going on than just the immediate tension in a muscle. You have things like all the other muscles that are brought into play, all the additional stabilizers brought into play. And I don't mean stabilizers like, you take some lightweight dumbbells, you recruit more stabilizers. No, we're talking about big movements that use your whole body. You use tremendous amount of stabilizers to move very heavy weight. You're not moving less weight because of the stabilizers on these sort of exercises where you're moving your body through space. You're involving more of them, and you can usually lift more weight. It's not uncommon for people to be able to weighted dip their body weight plus the plates more than they bench press. Not uncommon because there's more muscles involved, right? There's more muscles involved. Therefore, you can do more work. So you've got all of that going on with all the additional muscles brought in. Then we have things like the radiant effect. So when you look at it from that perspective, there's a hell of a lot more going on than just tension. And that's the reason weighted body weight exercises tend to produce superior results. And some of that, the radiant effect, also carries over to any exercise where you're standing on your feet, even if the body doesn't move through space. Perfect example, the strict standing press, right? So hopefully that answers the question better. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.